I'm joined today by husband and wife Chris and Evelyn Bradley. Chris and Evelyn have been involved in the band for many years now. Can you tell us, when did you join? Start with Evelyn. When did you join Whitburn Band, Evelyn?
I joined Whitburn in 1988. I was studying at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama, and Tony Swainson was my teacher. I remember being asked to play at a concert in Dunblane Cathedral to come along and help out the band in second baritone, and I went along and there was Jimmy Graham sitting in the second baritone chair, and I thought, oh, I'm not needed after all, but they said if I could sit in, and that was actually my audition for Whitburn Band. Jimmy Graham auditioned me, and luckily he enjoyed what he heard.
Good. Chris?
I joined the band in 1983, just after I started at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama, where my teacher was Nigel Bodis, and at the time I played for Clydebank Borough, and Whitburn, of course, had heard about me and heard me play at contests and asked me along to do a concert with them at Hexham Cathedral as a guest. I played Flugel in Eric Ball's arrangement of the Enigma Variations. That was just one of the pieces. And at the interval I was accosted by Major Peter Parks and some of the Whitburn committee and persuaded to join. And probably one of my better decisions.
And what was your first impressions of the band for both of you? When you first joined, did you have a sense of what Whitburn Band was like, or the sense of the organisation before you joined, and then what was it like when you did join?
Well, my first memory of Whitburn Band was when I heard them playing diversions in a bass team at the Scottish in 1987. That was with Major Peter Parks. And I remember I was in Motherwell and I was there playing with Paisley's Silver Band at the time, and I remember saying to my mum and dad sitting in the audience, I want to play with that band one day. And then luckily I did the year after that.
It is something which a few people have talked about, hearing the band for the first time and saying, I want to play with that band. I'm being in awe by the sound and that kind of thing. In the early 1990s, the band went on to have a number of successful contest results, one of them being second place at the European Championships, which of course was held in Scotland in Falkirk, with Major Peter Parks conducting. Can you tell us about that contest, coming second at the European?
I didn't actually take part in that contest because I had a bit of a sabbatical away from Whitburn. It was down to circumstances. I had moved to a flat in Paisley, and of course the band was quite far away then, and I would just decided to have a little break from the top level for a few years. So I had 2 years, so I missed all that, but I did hear the performance. I was at the contest to hear the performance.
Yeah, I remember it well. I was playing second euphonium at that point, but I remember the opening of the gala concert was my main thing. I really remember about that because Archie Hutchison was resident conductor of the band at that time, and he had done a rearrangement of Scots Wahey. So I opened the gala concert standing on my Oreo at the front of the stage, and I remember Archie saying to me, Evelyn, can you do this with no music? Can you memorise it? I said, yeah, no problem. But standing there, I remember I was so nervous because I was actually second euphonium at the time, and I was standing playing this solo, and no music in front of me. All I could see was my hair flapping about because with the nerves. But it was a wonderful experience, brilliant competition, great.
It was a great performance by Whitburn as well.
Yeah.
And it was extra added kudos of it being in Scotland at the time,
of course.
in Falkirk. A year after that, the band continued with success, and this time it was the Grand Shield, again with Major Peter Parks conducting, and the piece was Carve Will Remain. Good memories there. What was the Major like as a conductor and a man?
Inspiring.
Just awe-inspiring. I mean, as soon as he walked through the door, there was like a change in the atmosphere in the band room, and you just knew that it was time to switch on. And just as soon as he lifted his arms, it changed everybody's sort of approach, and it changed. The playing standard went up by miles every time.
Yeah. I remember we were, again, of course it was Carnival Remain, so it's got the huge big euphonium solo in it. And I remember one of my first experiences with the Major there, and I think John Stark was solo euphonium at that point, but obviously maybe wasn't at a rehearsal, and the Major made me play that top D about 15 times in a row. Top T, top T, top T, top T. But I remember the competition itself, it was so exciting. Obviously the lovely Euphonium solo at the start, and then the main thing I remember about it was the trombone section were absolutely electrifying if you listen back to that. Results obviously were really intense because we knew we'd played really well, and to be announced first place was just amazing.
It would have been a fantastic day, I'm sure. And you mentioned there, Evelyn, about the major putting you through your paces, as it were, and of course a few years later that year you moved to the Principal Euphonium chair and you were there for many years. How did it feel to take that seat in the band for the first time, and then your first contest with you on the end chair, as it were?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I haven't actually, my kind of history in the band, obviously I joined in second baritone, and I moved on to first bari for the European Championships in Lucerne in 1988 with Edward Gregson's connotations, so I had the experience of playing the baritone solo at that point. When I went on to solo euphonium, I was in my final year at the Academy, and I'd won the Governor's Recital Prize for brass that year. So I was in top form of my game, and I felt that I was absolutely ready for the challenge of playing Principal Euphonium with Whitburn. Frontier was my first Scottish performance, and then the year after that was of Men in Mountains, and that was my first 2 years on solo euphonium, and of course we won both of those with the major conducting.
And they're big pieces then for euphonium as well.
Absolutely.
And Chris, yourself as well, as being an end chair player, a soloist in your own right, you played flugel with the band, and one of the performances talked about still is Tallis Variations, which was at European in 2000 at the Birmingham Symphony Hall. Tell us about that.
Well, it was a great experience. I mean, we all know how much Philip McCann loves a good tune, and Tallis is a good tune, and I think personally it's one of Philip Sparks' best pieces of writing for brass band. If you listen to the original of Tallis, I mean, it's not that different. It's really clever the way he's taken what was, primarily a string piece and arranged it so well for brass, and also composed a few of his own sort of tunes in the middle. Philip McCann had a fantastic reading of it as well. So the whole build-up was incredible. I think you were second euphonium, weren't you? Because we were pregnant.
That's right.
Evelyn was pregnant with Ryan, so we had to get Thomas Rudy across on solo euphonium. We had Alex Kerwin. Was Alex in the band at that time? No, I beg your pardon, it was before her time. But we had a guest solo horn player as well from Yorkshire, whose name escapes me as well. But the band was fantastic, and we drew last in the Tallis Variations section. That was the set piece, and we drew first in our own choice, which was Dances and Arias. So we came off after a fantastic performance at Tallis, and we were on stage again 3/4 an hour later playing Dances and Arias. And the support for the Scottish bands was fantastic down there. I remember it being a really sunny day as well, the day we played, and we went and had a really good party after, and we finished 4th. And like you say, the performance at Tallis was just fantastic.
And certainly, I mean, they don't have that nowadays, having the two pieces in the same day at the European, which we would quite an experience having to draw last and then first in the two separate contests. In the 2000s, another performance which was stuck in the mind of many people, Evelyn, is Masquerade, which was the national finals in 2002. Big euphonium solo that at the Royal Albert Hall, and you were pregnant with Lauren, your second child, and you stood up to play that. Tell us about that.
I did stand up to play it, I remember it well. That was 18 years ago, Lauren's now 18. I remember all the lip slurs in that solo, and I have to admit it's not my forte, it's doing the lip slurs, so I had to practice and practice and practice over and over again, because it was particularly hard. It paid off though, because I played really well on the day, and not only that, but Lauren has turned into a wonderful musician, songwriter. Absolutely. And maybe that's all those lip slurs all going back in the days when she was in the womb.
Absolutely. And Chris, you of course then, again in the early 2000s, moved to the Principal Cornet chair of Whitburn Band. What year was that?
2004, just after the national finals.
And again, as I said to Evelyn there, what was it like to then sit on the end chair and think of all the people who'd sat in that chair before you, and of course you still hold that seat to this day.
It was, of course, you don't really think about these things when you're doing them. You don't really think whose seat you're filling.
Mm-hmm.
You just kind of, you just kind of do it. Because I mean, I was kind of not lambasted into doing it, but kind of it came as a surprise because the principal cornet player at the time was Eleanor Ferguson.
That's right.
And she taught me a lot. Just sitting next to her and playing bumper to her was fantastic. So it seemed like the natural transition for me, and I'd already done so much, as a student and a professional musician, and particularly as a flugel player with the band. I was used to having to stand up and do solos. It was just then a matter of mastering the cornet, and which at that time I didn't consider myself to be a cornet player. So I had to go and search for the right equipment, particularly the right mouthpiece, and I had to decide what kind of sound I wanted to make. And so but I mean, if you look at the players before me in that chair, there's some right legends down the years. Archie Sutherland was the famous guy in the 80s. Of course, he had the side embouchure, but he was a fantastic leader. And of course, Chick Cullen, who still plays rep in the band, was a really good servant on the PC chair. And we've had several sort of players that are now, playing with bands down south.
Hedley Benson as
Hedley
well.
Benson, who's now, he's the third trumpet in the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra now. So we've had, and Dave Prentice, quite a sort of good professional trumpet player. So we've had a few in that seat. So still enjoying it. As long as I can do it, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah, and you've of course won many accolades for your playing from that chair and playing solos. One of them that's been talked about for a while now, and this is I suppose with both of you, would be the British Open in 2017, Fraternity. Fabulous cornet solo in that piece. So Chris and Evelyn, how do you remember the run up to that contest and then the performance itself in Birmingham?
Well, you want to go first?
The run up to a contest, it's hectic, as you can imagine. You've got your work to negotiate. You've got kids at school or ranks at university. You've got to try and consider making sure all the uniforms are ready. We've got stuff to eat. Lauren at that time was in dancing and in football. It was football, so you've got to kind of judge all that and kind of run around trying to get all that organised. Juggle it around. But we've never missed it. You're at band every night of the week. So,
and when Florent Didier walked into the band hall, of course we knew Fraternity from having played it in 2014 at the Europeans. So we knew the notes, but he brought an extra special sort of vibe to the piece. And of course, him being as flamboyant as he is as a musician and a conductor. And the band just warmed to him straight away, and it just went like that all week. And it really terrific. Was. I'll never forget the cadenza and the first big cornet solo. I'll never forget when I played my top A at the end of the slow section before the sort of fancy bit. The bit at the end that goes up to the C sharp. I'll never forget that because the hall was half empty, so it was more boomy than normal. I'll never forget stopping that top A and hearing it ringing round for ages. It was just great. Still listen to that quite a lot, that performance. It was fabulous.
Yeah, that performance has been talked about by many people, conductors and players and listeners alike, as a real bookmark performance in the history of Whitburn Band. So Chris has continued as Principal Cornet. Evelyn, you're now kind of gone up to Euphonium, you're now working your way back down on first baritone. And then of course your son and daughter Ryan and Lauren were involved in the wee band and the youth band in the Heartlands, and now Ryan is a member of the senior band in the percussion section. How was it for you to have your son join the band, the senior band, in the ranks of the band?
It's an absolute pleasure to see Ryan developing as a player with Whitburn. We're such a family-orientated band, and Chris and I certainly wouldn't be where we are now if it wasn't for the help of some family and friends of the band when Ryan and Lauren were children. I'd like to really give a special mention to Margaret and John Gourley, Alan and Neil's mum and dad, who frequently babysat Ryan and Lauren for us. from the Whitburn Band, and also to Maureen Vidler, Alex's wife, who were, if it wasn't for them babysitting, then Chris and I wouldn't be where we are now today, and also that Ryan wouldn't have the opportunity to play percussion with Whitburn, and Lauren playing percussion with Heartlands as well.
Absolutely.
So they've kind of been grown up with the band family, and fantastic.
When the kids came along, before they came along, when we decided to try for kids, we said that there's no way we're going to expect them or make demands on them to fit into our musical life. We'll try to work around whatever they decide they want to do. But as Evelyn said, growing up in the band setting and sort of being dragged around the place, kicking and screaming sometimes. I can remember Lauren I was climbing the steps at Perth Concert Hall to do St Magnus about 9 o'clock at night at the Scottish Open, and she was clinging onto my legs. She wouldn't let me go up the stairs. So, I mean, despite what we said about not involving them, I suppose it was just a natural thing that happened.
Yeah.
And Ryan has been hitting things since he was 5 anyway. I've got marks in my house and in my garden to prove that.
There's a picture of him that goes back with him sitting at the timpani, just as a wee boy, 4 years old. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Ryan recently played an integral role in putting the band's virtual performances together over the last year in lockdown. He's done an absolutely superb job of that. How was it for you over lockdown, not only being in the house and doing your jobs and things, but then hearing the band must have been constantly over months on end, various different people's parts, various different pieces floating about the house? How was that in the house then?
To be honest, it was such a novelty at first because obviously it was all new to everybody, and I couldn't believe what Ryan knew about the technology at the start. I couldn't actually believe it, and obviously hearing the thing raw was interesting because it was never ever together, because even when you've got a click track, it's impossible to get everybody to play exactly with that click track, and so it just watching them gradually pulling it all together, and every performance got better as well, so he was learning.
He was learning, absolutely. Yeah, we're really proud of what he's achieved during lockdown. His professional approach has been really commendable, and it was lovely having him home from Edinburgh as well, making sure he was fed and watered when he was working round the clock. And it was also really good to know that if he did get anything wrong, Ryan would fix it.
Absolutely. And Chris, as I mentioned there, you've been a soloist. You'd already produced your first solo album, and then during lockdown you put together your second solo album, and Ryan was your sound engineer for that. How was it working with your son for your second solo album?
Well, I've got a good relationship with Ryan, but it was quite stressed at times because he was so busy doing so many other things. I mean, at the beginning I had his undivided attention, but as soon as the work started with the bands, it was difficult to pin him down. So a lot of it was done on the hop. A lot of the editing was done on the hop. Eventually I learned to record myself, and then I'd just hand the files to Ryan and he would muck about with it. But some of the best things are the ones I did myself, so on that album. And the album came about totally because people on social media were saying how about sticking it together, and I just stuck it together just as a wee kind of memory of lockdown, something to look back on. It's not a commercial album, it's just an online streaming album. So
good experience to do it. Now you mentioned there about the family within the band, the band as a family, and also your own family. Of course, you've got Ryan, who plays in the band and does a lot of the digital and sound engineering side. You've got Lauren, who's a fabulous singer and songwriter. It must be quite a balance to get that work-home life together for when band is really busy. And you've mentioned a wee bit of this already, but for example, the week before a European or the week before national finals, it's a real commitment, isn't it, to play with a band like Whitburn and to organise your life around the rehearsal. Some people may wonder, why do you rehearse every night, the lead up? So if you just give us a bit of a sense of what it's like the week before a contest.
Hectic. I think if this past year and a half, I think we've all realised, having all this time now, and how much we appreciate having all this time, how much of our time we actually did put into that. You'd be running to work. Well, first of all, we'd get up and you've got to make sure the kids are ready for school. You've got to drop them at school, then you've got to get to your own work, you know, and sometimes for me that can be 2 or 3 schools a day. Then you've got to pick the kids up after their school, feed them, organise a babysitter, go out to band. By the time you get to band, you're absolutely knackered. Your brain's kind of fried, and then of course by the end of it, I used to find that the most difficult bit about a band rehearsal was coming down after it.
Yeah,
Was getting myself back down to earth, because you know band rehearsals are usually quite exciting, so you're kind of buzzing at the end of it, and then the next day it's the same. It's the same thing. You just get used to it.
You do get used to it, and I think back on it now, I really empathise with Caroline and Charlie, what they're currently going through. Obviously we've been through it with Ailey and with Erin, and of course all the other parents and banders out there.
Of course.
Yeah, like Alan Gourley as well.
Lots.
It's must be a very good balancing act.
You don't always get it right though.
And, you know, the greatest thing is that, you know, at the end of it all, you're down, you're in Birmingham, you're in London with your friends, and win, lose or draw, you just forget how difficult that was, and you just end up having a good time.
And that's one of the great things at the end of the week, as well as obviously we would always take Ryan and Lauren to London, to Birmingham with us, and they loved it as well. They loved being with the friend, travelling down in the bus, and you know, and just fitting in with what we were doing.
Lauren still insists on going to London, even though she's not a player in the band.
She loves it.
Absolutely. And finally, Chris and Evelyn, I'd like you to sum up what it's like been playing in Whitburn Band, and perhaps you can give us your best performance moments or memories with the band over the years.
So it's been an absolute honour and a privilege to play with the band over these many years. There's so many great friends over the years, and yes, we do call it our second family. Best experiences, for me, Masquerade in 2002, definitely we've already talked about that, but also Dove Descending in Birmingham Symphony Hall in 1999. That was another great one, with a big Euphonium solo. But I also enjoyed playing some of the more diverse jobs that the band has done. For example, I really loved Dark Arteries with the ballet rumba. I thought it was an incredible experience. And I loved in 2019 the Edinburgh Festival with Christopher Bell, when we did James Macmillan's composition All the Hills and Vales. So I loved that experience as well.
I basically echo what Evelyn said, that it's an absolute privilege to play for a band that you just dreamed about playing for them. It's like being a top sports person, and you know, they'll all say they watched their heroes when they were kids and they wanted to be like their heroes, and it was similar for me, you know. And so to be able to live that dream from then until now, which is a long time, and it doesn't feel like a long time, it feels like just yesterday, and enjoyed every single moment of it. There have been hard times, don't get me wrong, but we've stuck together.
How many years is it for you, Chris, now?
Well, it's 1983, so that's like 17 years to 2000, plus 21, that's 38 years.
Yeah.
38 years.
32, 33.
I had a 2-year break in the middle though, so it's only 36. But I'm looking forward to getting my 50-year medal in a few years' time, if I ever make it. But great performances, of course. Tallis will always be spoken about. I thought the Fraternity at the Open was the pinnacle of performances for me. We did another great performance of it in 2014, by the way, with Mike Films at the European. But other great performances, Evelyn mentioned it earlier, Diversions in a Bass Theme. What year was that again? 83?
No, 80.
Whenever 88 with Parks. I played Flugo for that one. That was just electric. And another one was the Men in Mountains in 93.
Yeah.
I remember having had a break and I came back in and sat in third cornet next to Kenny Crookston. Imagine having that for a back row. And we had Ivan Newlands and John Beresford on second cornet. And the band again played a song, absolutely walked the Scottish. People were standing and clapping for us. That was in Motherwell. Yeah. And another one was Blitz with Philip McCann at the Scottish. It was pretty flawless. And most recently, again, I'd say this is quite a lot, was Harmony Music and Paganini with the Porthouse, both really good performances. I think the Rococo Variations with Nick at the Scottish Open a few years ago was terrific as well.
Yeah, and it's fantastic to hear you talk about memories from the 80s and the 90s and 2000s, and then as recent as 2019, because it just shows the consistency that the band have through performance throughout its years. Chris and Evelyn, husband and wife, Principal Cornet, ex-Principal Euphonium and their Principal Baritone, thank you very much for joining us today and for your memories. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.